What happens when a royal guest forgets the cameras are rolling and unleashes a tirade so shocking it stops a live broadcast cold? In just 36 seconds, one comment turned admiration into absolute chaos and destroyed any chance of a comeback. Before we dive into this unbelievable moment, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now because we're pulling back the curtain on royalty's dark side. We're exposing entitled celebrities and their shocking behavior the cameras never showed you. We've got the raw footage they don't want you to see, and you won't want to miss a single reveal. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on this outrageous behavior because you need to see what really happens when the mask slips. Now, let's get into what actually went down on Jennifer Hudson's show that day. The studio lights were blazing, the audience was settled in their seats, and Jennifer Hudson was beaming with her signature warm smile as she prepared to welcome her guest. This was supposed to be a friendly conversation, an easy interview, the kind of lighthearted chat that audiences love. But from the very first moment, something felt off. "Please welcome our very special guest today," Jennifer announced to the crowd, her voice full of genuine excitement and warmth. The audience erupted into applause as the guest walked onto the stage. She was dressed impeccably, every detail of her appearance carefully curated, and she wore a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Jennifer stood up, arms open for a hug, but the embrace was stiff, awkward, like two strangers forced into politeness. They sat down across from each other, and Jennifer jumped right in, trying to set a comfortable tone. "Thank you so much for being here. I've been looking forward to this conversation," Jennifer said, her smile unwavering despite the cool reception. "Well, I appreciate the invitation," the guest replied, her voice carrying an edge that immediately caught Jennifer off guard. Jennifer pressed on, determined to make this work. "You've been in the public eye for quite some time now. How have you been handling everything that comes with that level of attention?" The guest tilted her head slightly, as if the question itself was beneath her. "You know, Jennifer, I think people often forget that not everyone is built for this kind of scrutiny. Some of us carry ourselves with a certain level of dignity that others simply don't understand." There was a pause. Jennifer's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second before she recovered. The audience shifted in their seats, sensing the tension that was already building. "Of course, everyone handles things differently," Jennifer responded diplomatically, trying to steer the conversation back to safer ground. "What's been the most rewarding part of your journey?" "Rewarding?" the guest repeated, letting out a small, humorless laugh. "I suppose it's rewarding when people finally recognize the sacrifices I've made. But honestly, Jennifer, most people in this industry are so focused on themselves that they fail to see the real work that goes into maintaining a certain standard." Jennifer nodded slowly, her professionalism holding strong even as the guest's words dripped with condescension. "I think a lot of people can relate to feeling underappreciated in their own work." "Can they, though?" the guest interrupted, leaning forward slightly. "I'm not sure most people understand what it's like to carry the weight of expectation that I carry. It's exhausting, really, being held to such a high standard while watching others get praise for doing the bare minimum." The audience was dead silent now. Every eye in the room was locked on the exchange happening on stage. Jennifer maintained her composure, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, a recognition that this interview was quickly spiraling into uncomfortable territory. "I think everyone in this room works incredibly hard at what they do," Jennifer said carefully, her voice steady but firm. "And I think it's important to recognize that everyone's journey is different." "Oh, absolutely," the guest said, though her tone suggested she didn't believe a word of it. "But let's be honest, Jennifer, some journeys are more significant than others. Some people are just naturally more important in the grand scheme of things." Jennifer took a breath, her jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. "I don't know if I'd say anyone is more important than anyone else. We all have our own value." "That's very sweet of you to say," the guest replied with a patronizing smile. "But we both know that's not how the world actually works. There's a hierarchy, whether people want to admit it or not. And some of us were simply born into a different level of responsibility." The atmosphere in the studio was thick with discomfort. Audience members exchanged glances, some shaking their heads, others leaning forward to catch every word. Jennifer's team, behind the cameras, was frantically signaling, trying to figure out how to salvage this disaster in real time. Jennifer decided to pivot, to try a different angle. "Let's talk about your work. What projects are you most passionate about right now?" "Passionate?" the guest scoffed lightly. "Jennifer, passion is such an overused word these days. Everyone claims to be passionate about something. What I focus on is impact. real, meaningful impact that actually changes lives. Not everyone has the platform or the intelligence to create that kind of change. Jennifer's patience was wearing thin, but she maintained her grace. I think there are a lot of people doing incredible work, even if they don't have massive platforms. Sometimes the smallest acts make the biggest difference. How quaint, the guest said dismissively. That's the kind of thing people say to make themselves feel better about not achieving more. But those of us who actually matter, who actually have influence, we do understand that real change requires real power, and not everyone has that. Jennifer leaned back slightly, her eyes searching the guest's face as if trying to understand where this was coming from. I have to say, I'm a little confused about the direction this conversation is taking. I thought we were here to talk about the positive work you're doing, not to diminish what other people are contributing to the world. The guest waved her hand dismissively, as if Jennifer's concern was trivial. I'm not diminishing anyone, Jennifer. I'm simply being realistic. The truth is uncomfortable for some people to hear, but that doesn't make it any less true. There are leaders, and then there are followers. There are people who shape history, and people who simply exist within it. I happen to fall into the former category, and I make no apologies for that. The audience was visibly uncomfortable now. Some people were whispering to each other, others were shifting in their seats with pained expressions on their faces. This was not the uplifting, inspiring interview they had come to see. This was something else entirely, something that felt wrong, almost painful to watch. Jennifer pressed her lips together for a moment, gathering her thoughts. I understand that you see yourself as someone with significant influence, and I'm sure you've done meaningful work. But the way you're framing this, it sounds like you believe some people are inherently more valuable than others, and I just can't get behind that kind of thinking. That's because you're thinking with your heart instead of your head, the guest replied coolly. It's admirable, really, this idea that everyone is equal. It's a lovely sentiment for television and feel-good speeches. But in reality, Jennifer, society has always been structured in hierarchies. That's just how civilization works. Some people are born to lead, others are born to follow. Some people have the education, the breeding, the resources to make real change happen. Others simply don't. Jennifer's jaw clenched visibly. She placed both hands on the armrests of her chair, steadying herself. I grew up without a lot of resources. I didn't have everything handed to me. But I worked hard, and I built something for myself. Are you telling me that my journey, and the journeys of people like me, somehow count less than yours because of where we started? The guest tilted her head with a condescending smile. I'm not saying your journey doesn't count, Jennifer. I'm saying it's different. You've done well for yourself, considering your circumstances. That's commendable. But let's not pretend that what you've achieved is on the same level as someone who was raised with a global platform, who was taught from birth how to navigate the highest levels of society, who carries the weight of representing an entire institution. The scope is simply not the same. Wow, Jennifer said, shaking her head slowly. I honestly can't believe what I'm hearing right now. You just sat in my chair, on my show, and basically told me and everyone watching that their lives are somehow less significant because they weren't born into privilege. Do you hear yourself? The guest's expression hardened. I'm being honest, which is more than most people in your position would dare to be. Everyone wants to play nice, to pretend we're all the same, but we're not. And pretending otherwise is insulting to the people who've actually earned their place at the top. Earned? Jennifer repeated, her voice rising slightly. You're talking about being born into something. That's not earning anything. That's luck. That's circumstance. What you do with what you're given, that's what matters. And right now, what you're doing with your platform is using it to tear other people down, and I'm not okay with that. The guest laughed, but it was a harsh sound, completely void of warmth. You're taking this far too personally, Jennifer. This isn't about you, specifically. This is about understanding the way the world actually works, not the fairy tale version we tell ourselves to feel better. No, Jennifer said firmly, leaning forward now. This is absolutely personal, because you're sitting here insulting every single person in this room who's worked hard to build something for themselves. You're insulting the crew members who got up at 5 in the morning to set up this stage. You're insulting the audience members who took time out of their day to be here. You're insulting everyone who's ever had to fight for what they have instead of having it handed to them. And you know what? I think that says a lot more about you than it does about them. The guest's face flushed red, her composure slipping further. How dare you judge me? You don't know anything about the pressures I face, the expectations placed on me, the scrutiny I'm under every single day. You have no idea what it's like to live with that kind of burden." "You're right. I don't know what it's like to be in your exact position," Jennifer acknowledged, "but I do know what it's like to be scrutinized. I know what it's like to have people doubt you, to have to prove yourself over and over again. The difference is, I don't use that as an excuse to look down on other people. I use it as motivation to lift people up, to show them that they can do it too, regardless of where they come from." The guest stood up abruptly, her hands trembling slightly. "I don't have to sit here and listen to this lecture from you. You're twisting everything I'm saying, making me out to be some kind of villain when all I've done is speak the truth that no one else has the courage to say." That was it. That was the moment Jennifer's expression shifted from polite to incredulous. "I'm sorry, but I have to push back on that. Everyone matters. The people in this audience matter. The crew working on this show matters. Success isn't measured by how much power you think you have over others." The guest's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Of course you'd say that, Jennifer. You have to appeal to everyone, don't you? That's your brand." The relatable host who came from nothing and made it big. "It's a nice story, but some of us don't have to rely on being liked by the masses. Some of us don't have to pander to public opinion. Some of us are held to a different standard because we represent something bigger than ourselves, something that transcends this shallow celebrity culture you're all so desperate to be part of." The words hung in the air like poison. Jennifer's entire body language changed in that instant. She sat up straighter, her shoulders squared, her expression transformed from patient hospitality to righteous anger. Shallow celebrity culture? Is that what you think this is? Is that what you think the people who work on this show, who pour their hearts into creating something meaningful, are part of? I think, the guest said slowly, deliberately, that most of the entertainment industry is about distraction and ego. People pretending to care about important issues when really they just want attention and applause. Real change, real impact, that comes from people who are raised to understand responsibility, who have the education and the pedigree to actually make a difference in the world. Not people who stumbled into fame because they could sing a song or tell a joke. Several audience members audibly gasped. Someone in the back row said, "Oh no, she didn't loud enough for the microphones to pick up." The tension in the room had escalated from uncomfortable to absolutely explosive. This was no longer just an awkward interview. This was a full-blown confrontation, and everyone could feel it building towards something unprecedented. Jennifer stood up slowly, her movements controlled and deliberate, her entire presence commanding the room. "Let me make something very clear to you right now," she said, her voice low and steady but carrying an on-the-nose, unmistakable edge of steel. "You can sit there with your fancy title and your sense of superiority, and you can tell yourself whatever story you need to believe about why you're better than everyone else. But what you will not do, what I will not allow, is come onto my stage and disrespect the people who have worked their entire lives to create something meaningful, something real, something that actually connects with people's hearts." The guest also stood, her face flushed with indignation. "I have not disrespected anyone. I've simply stated facts that you're too caught up in political correctness to acknowledge. Not everyone is equal, Jennifer. Not everyone has the same value. Some people lead, some people follow. Some people matter more in the grand scheme of history. That's not cruel, that's just reality, and I refuse to apologize for acknowledging it." "You want to talk about reality?" Jennifer fired back, her voice rising for the first time. "Here's reality. You walked into this studio thinking your title would protect you from having to show basic human decency. You thought you could say whatever you wanted, treat people however you wanted because of who your family is. But let me tell you something. Your last name doesn't give you permission to treat people like they're beneath you. It doesn't give you the right to waltz in here and tell an entire audience full of hardworking people that their lives matter less than yours. I never said anyone's life matters less," the guest protested, though her conviction was wavering now. "I said, some people have more responsibility, more duty, more importance in terms of their role in society. That's not the same thing." "Yes, it is," Jennifer said firmly. "When you tell someone that their work isn't as important as yours, when you suggest that people who weren't born into privilege are somehow less capable of creating change, you're absolutely saying their lives matter less. And you know what? I've had enough. This interview is over." "Representing something bigger doesn't mean looking down on everyone else," Jennifer countered, her voice now carrying a sharp edge. "And honestly, I think the people watching right now deserve better than being told they don't matter as much as someone who was born into a certain family." Don't twist my words, the guest snapped, her polite facade cracking completely now. I never said people don't matter. I said some people have more responsibility, more visibility, more influence. There's a difference, and if you can't understand that distinction, if you're going to deliberately misinterpret everything I say to make yourself look like some kind of hero, then maybe this entire conversation is pointless. Maybe you're not equipped to have this kind of honest discussion. The audience gasped collectively. This was beyond anything they had expected. The guest had just directly insulted Jennifer's intelligence and capability, right there on her own show, in front of hundreds of people and cameras, broadcasting to potentially millions more. The shock rippled through the room like an electric current. Jennifer sat back in her chair, staring at her guest with an expression that was equal parts disbelief and disappointment. The silence that followed seemed to stretch on forever, though it was probably only a few seconds. When Jennifer finally spoke, her voice was quiet, but every word carried weight. "You know what?" she said slowly, carefully. "I think you're absolutely right about one thing. This conversation is pointless. Because if you truly believe that sitting here and insulting me, insulting the people who showed up to support this show, insulting everyone who's worked hard to build something from nothing, if you truly believe that's acceptable behavior, then we have nothing left to talk about." The guest's expression shifted from smug superiority to genuine shock. Her mouth fell open slightly, her eyes widening as the reality of what was happening began to sink in. "Excuse me? Are you suggesting that I should leave?" "I'm not suggesting anything," Jennifer replied firmly, standing up from her chair. "I'm telling you, I invited you here to have a genuine conversation, to learn about you and share that with people who care. I opened my platform to you with respect, but instead, you've spent this entire time belittling everyone around you and acting like you're somehow above basic decency and respect." "How dare you?" the guest hissed, also rising to her feet, her face contorted with rage. "Do you have any idea who you're speaking to? Do you understand the position I hold, the influence I carry? You're a talk show host, Jennifer. I am part of something far more important than this television program. I know exactly who I'm speaking to." Jennifer shot back without hesitation. "I'm speaking to someone who clearly forgot that respect is a two-way street. You can't demand to be treated with dignity while treating everyone else like they're beneath you." The guest's face flushed with anger. "This is outrageous. I came here as a favor to you, Jennifer. Your little show should be grateful to have someone of my stature grace this stage." "A favor?" Jennifer repeated, her voice rising slightly. "A favor would have been showing up and treating people with kindness. What you did today was not a favor. It was insulting, and frankly, it's embarrassing." "You don't get to speak to me this way," the guest said, her voice shaking with indignation. "I don't have to stand here and listen to this." "You're absolutely right," Jennifer agreed, her tone icy now. "You don't have to stand here. In fact, I think it's best if you leave." The audience erupted. Some people cheered, others gasped, and a few simply sat in stunned silence. The guest stood frozen, clearly not expecting this turn of events. "Are you serious right now?" the guest demanded, her voice a mixture of disbelief and fury. "Completely serious," Jennifer confirmed, crossing her arms. "This is my show, and I'm not going to let anyone, I don't care who they are, come on here and disrespect the people who work hard every single day to make this happen. You need to go." "This is absurd," the guest sputtered, looking around as if expecting someone to come to her defense. "You're making a huge mistake, Jennifer. Do you understand the consequences of this?" "The only mistake I made was thinking this interview would be different," Jennifer replied firmly, "and as for consequences, I can live with the consequence of standing up for what's right. Can you live with the consequence of how you've acted today?" The guest opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. For the first time since the interview began, she seemed at a loss for words. Her perfectly constructed composure was crumbling, and everyone could see it. "Security," Jennifer called out, her voice steady and clear. "Please escort our guest out of the studio." 2. Security personnel appeared from the side of the stage, moving quickly but professionally toward the guest. The guest looked at them, then back at Jennifer, her expression a mixture of shock, anger, and something that might have been humiliation. "This isn't over," the guest said, her voice low and threatening. "You have no idea what you've just done." "I know exactly what I've done," Jennifer replied calmly. "I've protected the integrity of this show and the people who believe in it." That's my job, and I'm not afraid to do it, no matter who's sitting in that chair. The security team gently but firmly began to guide the guest toward the exit. She resisted for a moment, trying to maintain some shred of dignity, but it was clear she had no choice. As she was led off the stage, she turned back one last time. "You're going to regret this, Jennifer," she called out, her voice carrying across the silent studio. Jennifer didn't flinch. "No, I won't," she said simply, "but I think you might." And with that, the guest was gone. The studio doors closed behind her with a heavy thud that seemed to echo through the entire space. For a moment, nobody moved, nobody spoke. Everyone was processing what they had just witnessed. Then, slowly, the audience began to clap. It started with one person, then two, then suddenly the entire room was on their feet, applauding Jennifer Hudson for standing her ground. The applause was thunderous, a release of all the tension that had built up over the course of that disastrous interview. Jennifer stood there, taking it all in, her expression a mixture of relief and exhaustion. She had just done something that very few hosts would have the courage to do. She had put her foot down, drawn a line in the sand, and refused to let anyone cross it, regardless of their status or their title. When the applause finally died down, Jennifer walked back to her chair and sat down, taking a moment to compose herself. She looked directly into the camera, her eyes still carrying that fire but also a deep sincerity. "I want to say something," Jennifer began, her voice soft but unwavering. "I started this show because I believe in having real conversations with people. I believe in listening, learning, and connecting. But I also believe in respect, mutual respect. And when someone walks onto the stage and forgets that basic principle, when they treat people like they're less than, I can't just sit here and let it happen." She paused, taking a breath. "Every single person in this audience, everyone on my crew, everyone watching at home, you all matter. Your work matters. Your struggles matter. Your dreams matter. And I will never, ever allow anyone to come on this show and suggest otherwise. That's a promise." The audience erupted again, this time with even more enthusiasm. People were cheering, some were crying, and everyone felt the weight of what Jennifer had just said. This wasn't just about one bad interview. This was about something bigger. This was about dignity, about standing up for what's right, about refusing to bow down to entitlement and arrogance. Jennifer smiled, a genuine smile this time, and the warmth returned to her eyes. "All right, let's take a break," she said with a small laugh. "I think we all need a minute to process what just happened." As the show cut to commercial, the energy in the studio was electric. The crew gathered around Jennifer, congratulating her, supporting her, making sure she was okay. Everyone knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary. This wasn't scripted. This wasn't planned. This was real, raw, and absolutely unforgettable. In that moment, Jennifer Hudson proved something that many people in the industry forget, that kindness and strength are not mutually exclusive. She had been kind, patient, and professional for as long as she could be, but when pushed too far, when faced with blatant disrespect, she stood her ground with a strength that commanded respect. The guest, meanwhile, had just learned a very hard lesson. Fame, titles, and status mean nothing if you don't treat people with basic human decency. The world was watching, and the world saw exactly what happened when entitlement met integrity, and integrity won. This moment would be talked about for weeks, months, even years to come. People would replay it, analyze it, dissect every word and every gesture. But the message would remain the same. No one, absolutely no one, is above treating others with respect. And Jennifer Hudson had just made that message crystal clear to millions of people watching around the world. So, what do you think? Was Jennifer right to kick her guest off the show, or should she have handled it differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more shocking moments like this. We're not afraid to show you what really happens when celebrities think the rules don't apply to them.